Okay, new policy. For my introduction, I can only use as many words as goals the Lightning scored this week. Ready? Ready? Team, please suck less. That was it. I don't like this policy. Hi everyone, Sammy Flair here. Welcome back to Bolt Action, the series that will most likely be used as evidence when my lawyer submits the insanity plea. Screams. The unshakable screams. This video may end up being a relatively short entry in the series because, as I alluded to in the introduction, there's not a whole lot to talk about. It was a fairly low event week despite the 3 games that were played. And those games are as follows. A 4-0 loss to the Carolina Hurricanes. Yes, that's a shutout. Payback's a bitch. A 5-0 loss to the St. Louis Blues. And a 4-2 win over the Chicago Blackhawks. Taken against the rest of the season so far, doing the preparation for the video this week has easily been the most challenging, and I think I know why. I'm kind of running out of ways to say the exact same thing. And listen, I could easily do that. I could occupy the next 2 hours of real time, my recording time, screaming at this camera saying the same thing that I've been saying for the last 5 to 6 weeks or so, but out of respect for you, the audience, I don't really think you want to hear that. And sure, I could come up with new and hopefully creative ways to continue illustrating my point here using things like data. Here's an example for you. Did you know that the Tampa Bay Lightning's best defensive pairing as far as expected goals against are concerned is Calvin DeHaan and Nick Perbix? What? That can't be true. I have been lambasting these two for their poor decision making, especially as it concerned turnovers. How is it possible that these two are statistically data driven the best for goals against? I'm flabbergasted by this. I actually have no words for that. But no, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole tonight. I refuse to talk about the defense again this week. Instead, I'm going to address some of the questions that I have been getting over the course of this past week. The first question concerns the word regression. Now, I have used the word regression in reference to the Lightning as we've been talking about how they were once high and mighty and they were expected to make the Stanley Cup final every year and they were expected to be competitive every single year. And naturally, as time goes on and as players leave, like, you are expected to regress back down. You can't stay on top forever, right? And generally speaking, we have seen that to be true. I think you can reasonably expect that from any team that wins the Stanley Cup. You can't stay on top forever. You pay that inevitable cup tax of your players won a Stanley Cup. Their rank is way high up there. They can command a lot more money and you can't afford them in the long run. That's just a thing that happens. But there's another type of regression to talk about here. And for the most part, it's not a good thing that you want to discuss, but there are instances where this kind of regression can be a good thing. It can be a positive thing. And what I'm talking about is regression to the mean. Let me give you an example to demonstrate what I mean by this. At the time of recording, there are 4 players tied for the league lead in goals at 13. One of them is Sam Reinhart of the Florida Panthers. Sam Reinhart is a pretty good player in his own right. He's in his 9th season in the league, currently playing with the Florida Panthers. He's usually pretty reliable for anywhere between 40 and 60 points over the course of an 82-game season. Over the course of his first 8 seasons in the league, he averaged just under 25 goals every single season. Now, if you put that in comparison to the 13 goals he scored in his first 16 games of this season, you can probably see where this is going. If Sam Reinhart somehow managed to keep up this current goal-scoring pace that he's on right now, he would be tallying 66 goals this season. That would be the most goals scored in a season during the salary cap era. More than Alex Ovechkin and Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, more than Sidney Crosby, Steven Stamkos, Ilya Kovalchuk, Jaromir Jagr. Throw a name out there. Nobody has scored more than 65 goals in a season, and yet Sam Reinhart is currently on pace to do so. But you and I both know that's incredibly unlikely to happen, in no small part because, well, the most goals that Sam Reinhart has ever scored in a single season is 33. So regression to the mean is just a fancy way of saying, in an example like this, Sam Reinhart, as good as he has been and as hot of a start as he is having, is most likely to cool off and his pace of scoring is going to drop down to what it typically is. And that regression to the mean can account for a hot player cooling off and coming back down, but it can also account for a very cold player heating up and rising back to where they would normally be. Take Alex Ovechkin, for instance, only has 4 goals through his first 14 games, a guy that has never scored fewer than 30 goals in a full season. So yeah, he's not going to be stuck at that pace forever. He's going to pick back up. As this applies to the Lightning, I think we have already seen a bit of that regression to the mean already take place, at least on the offensive side of the puck. There's no denying that the offense has played incredibly well. They're putting up a ton of goals. Kucherov and Point by themselves, but throw Hedman in the mix and throw Stamkos in the mix and throw Hagel in the mix. And it's been great, but you just kind of knew that at some point they were going to cool off, even just a little bit. And that is a negative regression, if you don't mind the redundancy that I just spoke into existence. But it was evidenced by this past week. They got shut out in back-to-back games. It's clearly there. It's in the stats. But I think there is a potential for a positive regression to mean with the defense. I don't think that we have seen the defense play up to its capabilities. And if we have, it's been in very small glimpses throughout this season. Going back to that stat about defensive pairings and expected goals against, are Victor Hedman and Mikhail Sergachev good defensemen? Yes, I think they are. I know that's a subjective viewpoint, but go ahead, ask around some hockey pundits and other content creators and just dig in a little bit and see if other people think that Victor Hedman and Mikhail Sergachev are good defensemen. And yet, in spite of that, Victor Hedman has 2 pairings that account for the actual worst expected goals against on the team. Guess who the next 2 worst are? Mikhail Sergachev. I'm not going to say that's a statistical anomaly because we don't have the full picture yet. It wouldn't be fair to compare it against last season, a full 82 games, because we've only seen 17 games of this season. What I will say is that it's fairly atypical, especially for those 2 guys. I am pretty confident that they're going to get it turned around. They're going to figure things out. And I feel largely the same way about the rest of the defensive core. It's more just a matter of when. What does that look like realistically? I think it's pretty much the opposite of what I've been complaining about for the previous 5 weeks. It's better decision making both with and without the puck. And when you are without the puck, it's covering your man in the defensive zone. When you do have the puck, it's making smarter passes and higher percentage plays along the way. It's staying focused and present in the moment. It's not having these lapses of judgment at the worst possible times. And it's just overall returning to the form of who we know the Lightning defense can be. And look, I will continue to say, I know that the onus isn't totally on the defensive pairings for all of these mistakes, right? For the turnovers, for the lost responsibilities in the defensive zone, for all the goals against. A lot of that does also fall on the forwards. But when you're giving up a lot of odd man rushes and it doesn't really look like the defensive pairings are playing like they're supposed to and not really shutting those down as much as they possibly can, it's inevitable that they're going to get a lot of that blame focused on them. Which leads me to the second question that I was getting asked a bunch this week. And that is the team playing differently in front of Jonas Johansson than they would Andrei Vasilevsky? Short answer, yes. Long answer, no, with a but. That's B-U-T, not B-U-T-T. I know you already knew that, but I don't know. I just felt the need to clarify. When you are used to playing with a superstar, a goalie that will bail you out night in and night out. If you're not having your best night, you can usually count on the fact that he is going to. You usually relax a little bit, right? You're prone to take more risks because you know that you can usually get away with them. You're prone to trusting your goalie a lot more than you would a younger goalie or a backup goalie or somebody who hasn't played a whole lot of games at this level before. And when you have that trust with your goaltender, everybody else just kind of gets into their position and they start doing what they're best at. You're no longer worried about what do I have to do to help fill in this gap and help assist this young goaltender or this backup goaltender. You're thinking, he's got that. Let me go do what I do best now. I may or may not have talked about it on this channel before, but I play volleyball every single week. If you don't know, that is a sport that has 6 people on the court at all times, and all 6 positions have a specific role they're supposed to fill. They have a specific area of the court that they're supposed to cover. And when you have 6 people on the court that know what they're doing, it generally flows pretty well and nobody's worrying about, oh, is this person covering where they're supposed to because I'm going up for a block, so on and so forth. But when you throw a relatively new or inexperienced player into the midst of 5 people that do know what they're doing, everybody else takes on just that extra little bit of responsibility to help cover for the obvious skill gap that is now present on the court. But when you are enduring that point after point for the entirety of a game, a set, a match, a however long you end up playing, your focus all of a sudden shifts from let me be aggressive, let me do my job well, how can we put this other team away, to how can we survive? How can we fill in this gap and just make sure we don't get slaughtered? So even though they won't say it, because NHL players are notorious for saying the bare minimum in interviews and never saying anything that's going to go off the rails and rarely showcasing any sort of personality, it's hard for me to think that these players playing in front of Jonas Johansson and Matt Tompkins don't have even a little bit of that mindset. That's the short version. That's the yes answer to that question. But the longer one, the no with a but answer to that question, it's, well, they've been playing this way without Vasilevsky. What about his presence would change so much that all of a sudden they would stop turning the puck over and they would all of a sudden learn to defend better in their zone? The point is that it's going to be really hard to say either way until we actually get Andrei Vasilevsky back in net and we give it a few games and we can kind of see what the landscape of the team is at that point in time. So I'm kind of throwing my hands up right now and just saying, I hope that it's going to change. I hope that the Big Cat's presence is going to be a shot in the arm for the team and they're going to start rattling off wins like it's nobody's business, but we really don't know. Not until he comes back. Question 3 I got a lot this week is, what is the timetable for Andrei Vasilevsky's return? The short answer is, I'm a nobody YouTuber. Why would I know this? Vasi has been back at practice this week. He's been taking shots. It looks like his rehab is going very well. And I would have to imagine that for a guy like him, he's not going to get on the ice until he's 100% ready. And if he's 100% ready to be practicing, it means he's itching to get back in a game. But I don't know that it's as simple as that. In the interviews that I've seen from him so far, he continues to make a point that we are a couple weeks short of that initial 8-week timeline, that 8-week prognosis. And he's making a big deal out of saying that specifically. So I don't know if that's just what his agent is telling him to say, what the team is telling them to say, or if there's actually something else going on behind the scenes, something to do with, I don't know, salary cap issues or players association. I don't know. There's any number of things that could be going on. The point is that because he continues to make that statement, as good as it is to see him back on the ice and as good as it is to see him back at practice, it would not surprise me if we don't actually see him in game action until the 1st of December. I, of course, am hoping and praying and crossing my fingers and putting every good vibe I possibly can out there that I am wrong about this and that he happens to appear in a game next week. But again, we'll just see. Why are you asking me? I'm not an expert. And the last question that I've continued to get throughout this week is Patrick Kane coming to the Tampa Bay Lightning? No, he's not. And I know why this question came up a bunch this week. Apparently, Wayne Gretzky said he would love to see Patrick Kane play for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And Emily Kaplan supposedly said that the Lightning are in contention for Patrick Kane. Look, there are a couple things in play here. Number one being the salary cap. When Vasilevsky comes back, the Lightning will just barely be under the salary cap again. So unless they're going to start shipping some players away for draft picks and shedding contracts like that, it's highly unlikely that they're going to be able to create enough cap space for Patrick Kane to jump on board. Sorry. But even more than that, you have to ask, what does Patrick Kane actually give you? What asset does he bring you? What need does he help address at this point in the season? Because I can guarantee you that 34-year-old, almost 35-year-old Patrick Kane is not going to help out your defensive struggles right now. Would it be cool from a legacy standpoint if the Lightning were playing better right now? Yeah, I think it'd be cool to have Patrick Kane play for the Lightning. I think that'd be a lot of fun, but I don't see it as realistic. What I see is most likely he's going to go to our neighbors to the south in the Florida Panthers. I could see him going to Buffalo or Detroit. Detroit would be a lot of fun, right? But unless I'm just severely overlooking something, I just don't see it as a possibility that Patrick Kane is somehow going to land in Tampa Bay. Let me quickly shift focus to some good things that happened this week before we preview next week's schedule and wind down the video. First of all, congratulations to Dave Andreychuk and Brad Richards. The team announced that those two would be selected to the Lightning Hall of Fame, or rather they have been selected. We're just waiting on an induction ceremony now. I don't think there was a date given for that, but for those of you who don't know, Dave Andreychuk was captain of the team, the 2004 team that beat the Flames for their first Stanley Cup. Brad Richards was also on that team. Two guys that very much deserve to be in the Lightning Hall of Fame. And secondly, I want to mention this because it's been making me giggle ever since I've seen it today. But tomorrow, November 18th, is Kids Day at Amalie Arena as they play the Edmonton Oilers. And the Tampa Bay Lightning social media team has been showcasing some children's artistic renditions of our favorite players. Apart from being absolutely adorable, some of these pictures have been making me laugh quite a bit. Because, well, you'll see in a second. And trust me, I'm not being critical because these drawings are way better than I could ever do. Like, see, there's some pretty good ones in here. This Victor Hedman one, that's better than I could draw. This Braden Point picture, that's pretty on point, if you'll forgive the pun. Oh, but there are two that have just been making me crack up endlessly. I can't even look at it on my phone without laughing again. I'm gonna try to get through this. This drawing of Andrei Vasilevskiy, apart from the fact that it is pretty on point because he definitely makes that face, it makes him look like a character from the Rick and Morty universe. And the only thing that's in my head right now is when Vasilevskiy comes back and he starts doing his incredible things and he's saving shots, I'm just gonna picture him trash talking the other players and yelling and swearing at them in his awful Rick impression. I think it's gonna be wonderful. Vassy, if you ever see this, please make my dream come true. And the last one that I just can't get over is Tanner Jeannot. And for those of you who don't know, this is what Tanner Jeannot looks like. And this was his picture. And if you're anything like me, then what you're undoubtedly seeing right now is this Tanner Jeannot as Pennywise the Clown. And now, just like with Vasilevskiy, all I can picture is Tanner Jeannot screaming Pennywise quotes as he's laying body checks on opposing players. Beep, beep, Richie! Ow. Ow, son of a bitch, that hurt. There's one for the outtakes. Ow! That's why I'm a volleyball player, not a hockey player. Okay, let's wrap this up. Here are the games we'll be talking about in next week's video. The Lightning have 4 games coming up this week. It gets started with the first of 2 matchups with the Edmonton Oilers, that first one being at home at Amalie Arena. Then they host the Boston Bruins, division rival, who's looking very good right now. And they finish the homestand against the Winnipeg Jets before starting a road trip in, you guessed it, Carolina. It's a little odd that the Lightning are going to get all of their games against the Hurricanes out before December, but I'm not complaining. That is going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for giving me just a little bit of your time today. For those of you that are celebrating Thanksgiving coming up, those of you here in the States, happy Thanksgiving. I hope you have a wonderful time with family or friends or whoever you choose to spend the holiday with. But until I see you again, remember, go Bolts, and we all float down here, Tanner. God, what was that? Is that really the best I could do? Screw it, I'm keeping it in.